Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, the man who is never far from a movie theater, Richardson, an artist, comic book reader, gamer, and podcaster, is here to talk not only about his show, Backlook Cinema, but also his podcast crush on none other than the blurred girl herself, Karama Horne. So, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Ooh, sweating, but like Satan's living in here with me. But I'll make it through. Ooh, global warming, am I right? But before we dive into all of this, can you tell people where they can find you and your show online?
Well, they can find the show at www.backlookcinema.com. That's my website. I have a couple of blogs there. That's where the show is. You can find the show there. Also, you can find the show wherever you're listening to this right now. You'll find Backlook Cinema, the podcast.
Alrighty. Well, it's good you have a website. I always think it feels more official when you have like a website you can go to. So it's nice. I checked out yours. Very, very professional.
Yeah, you can find social media and all that other stuff on the website too. So super awesome.
Right. Well, we'll list it below, but let's get to this crush. But we're going to start with the term blurred. Was the Blurred Girl podcast the first instance you'd heard that term before?
I don't know. I don't know where I first heard that word. I'm pretty sure that the first time I heard it was in podcast form, but I don't know when I first heard it. But
Yeah.
I might have known what it was by the time I started listening to her.
It seems definitely of something that came with the internet and like kind of having these subcultures online. But I heard it, I think probably Blurred Girl, but definitely some type of internet realm is where I first heard it. Would you say you identify as a blurred? Which for those listening that have no clue what we're saying, it's black nerd.
Yeah, I'm definitely a black nerd. I was a black nerd from way back. I mean, all the way from when I first started. I think it probably started with superhero cartoons. I was or Archie Comics superhero cartoons, and then I moved up to Star Trek, and then I moved up to Star Wars, and it just kept compiling like all the things that anything that was sci-fi and fantasy. And I would read stuff that was like that read like fantasy that many people don't consider fantasy. So like there are a lot of biblical stories that read like fantasy, and so I read a lot of biblical stories, and it was all the same to me. And then I read a lot of sci-fi novels when I was young. I think I was like maybe 12 or 13 when I read Dune. So it was excuse me, sorry, my throat is all clogged up, but it was Dune and a lot of Isaac Asimov and a lot. I just love all of that stuff. So yeah, I was really into it.
Yeah, and you're kind of like the same age as this other guest I had, Barry 3D, the comedian, and he was talking about being a blurred back in the day. It was so much different than the kids today have it. They can go online and find people that have these like similar interests as them and that are also black. But back in the day, it was really hard. I remember kind of being like one and only. I mean, I was in like the advanced classes, so the other black girls were definitely nerds with me, but they weren't nerding out on things, I guess I'd say. I don't know. One of the blurs, I will give her credit. Shout out Brittany. Her daughter is named after Raiden from Mortal Kombat, so she was a low-key blurred.
Right. Yeah, a lot of us had to. I don't want to say we had to hide our nerdom. It's like you're not exactly hiding your nerdom. A lot of times you just physically look like a nerd. You look like a character from Revenge of the Nerd. So it's not like, and then you're already smart, or you're kind of like one of the smartest people in your group, and you're wearing glasses and you walk funny. It's like you're not walking. It's not like you're hiding. So, but I would say it's like there are a lot of people that may have had like nerd interests that could hide it, and so they did. But yeah, you just basically, like when you're in high school or something like that, you just find your group and you just hang out with your group. And so there was a crew of dudes that I hung out with, and we were like multicultural in a really in a black neighborhood, so in a mostly black school. And but our little crew is multicultural, and we would just nerd out over our little nerd things, nerd out over the things that I just talked about. So yeah, that and then we all had common interests like in science and what you call it, whatever the other things that you would nerd out about. But
Mhm.
yeah, we just and then you get called nerd, people screaming the word nerd at you, and they mean it as an insult. And it's not
Yeah,
like you were ashamed, but you knew that it was like uh you didn't want to be, you didn't want to hold on to that moniker. It's like,
not at the
but
time.
but that's what you were, right?
Yeah, in hindsight, have blurs kind of been your go-to when it's come to crushes over the years? Like when we were growing up, were you into other blurs, or is this something that's come with age?
I don't know. I don't know if I was when you're a nerd, you want to be with the cool kids. Like you
True.
want to be like with the athlete or with the cheerleader or with the student president if he happens to be, because usually a student president is like a popularity contest. So it's not
Mhm.
because he has like really hard hitting policies, because he's popular. So excuse me. So yeah, I didn't. There was never a time when I was like super attracted to another blurred. If anything, they were just like a friend. There was like maybe one girl that I was attracted to that looked like they could have been a blurred, but otherwise I was like all the other kids. I wanted the most attractive girl that had no interest in science or sci-fi or Lego blocks or Transformers. They had no interest in those things.
So, how did you stumble upon the Blurred Girl podcast?
This is when I was first starting to listen to podcasts, and when you just do a general search for podcasts, like I want to see when you search for comic book podcasts, or you searching for a superhero podcast, or whatever blurred thing you looking for, you do find the predominantly white podcasts first. Those are the
Mhm.
ones that show up in the search results first. So you really have to double down on the things that you're looking for. Um, and so one of the things that I finally found was I don't think it was specifically a blurred podcast, but it was a thing that was talking about nerd culture in general. And so what I stumbled upon was Karama Horne was one of the rotating hosts of the show, and she was the blurred girl. And so I just knew her voice. So um I was just looking looking forward to listening to her whenever she came on the show.
And you mentioned the voice, and the podcast being a usually audio format. We usually that's all we get. We get the voice of the person, and I can kind of relate with you on this because I'm currently listening to 60 songs that explain the 90s, and I'm crushing on the host Rob Harvilla, and it's not because of any. I don't know what he looks like. I think I've googled him a couple times when I've tried to find his name, and he's not a horrible looking human, but it is the voice that I do like. What about her voice, Karama's voice, kind of sucked you in, drew you in?
Oh, I don't know if there was anything particular about her voice. I mean, it's very smooth. It's very enthusiastic. She's very knowledgeable about the things that she's talking about. So it's more about her interests that attracted me to her than her voice herself. I mean, she has a very uh nice and beautiful voice, but it's there's nothing that like is any real peculiarity about it. It's not like it's weird or strange or uh any kinks about it or anything like that. I mean, it's a very conventional voice, but at the same time it's a kind of soft and reassuring voice at the same time. Um it's definitely a voice that you can listen to, but I was more attracted to what the voice was saying than what the voice sounded like.
Again, another thing I think Rob Harvilla and the crush I'm having on him is because he's breaking down song music, which I love from the 90s, which I'm obsessed with. So it's like learning about all these things and being someone who was like, I was like a 90s kid. So obviously I don't know the ins and outs of like the early 90s as far as like Nirvana and stuff. So I'm learning that because I was like, I was entering kindergarten, I think, when he passed away. So how would I have known all that? So I can kind of get you're learning from Karama and she's explaining things, she's breaking things down. What topic is or was like your favorite to listen to her talk about?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure because it was such a long time ago. Because now she mainly does interviews on her show, but I do like about um when she's on her own show, she's mainly doing interviews. But when she's guesting on other shows, she's doing breakdowns of popular TV shows. Like, so a lot of times she's invited on the show to talk about something like maybe like what's it, the red witch, the scarlet witch, scarlet vision, what was it called? I forgot already.
WandaVision.
WandaVision, that is correct. So I don't know if she was on that particular podcast talking about WandaVision, but she's on shows like that talking about something like WandaVision or Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or back it was actually called the Falcon and the Winter Soldier before they changed the name in the last frame of the episode. Or she might be talking about one of the Marvel superhero movies or the DC superhero movies. She may have been on a panel where she talked about Wonder Woman 1984. So I do like her enthusiasm when she's talking about like the popular media on television and the movie screen, talking about the stories and the development and those things.
I do want to mention you were about 37 when this crush formed back in the day. And I don't usually bring up age unless it's interesting because I think crushes at that age, which is the age I am right now, 37, can be so vastly different than the ones we had as kids. I think if you compare how I reacted to Backstreet Boys when I was 12 to how I am with, say, Homelander today from The Boys, there is like less of an obsession and a chaos to the crush. It's just like, I love this character, but I'm not decorating my entire home in Homelander merch. But shout out to my old roommate. I do have one poster of him. She got me for my birthday and I do love it. But yeah, crushing on Karama in your late 30s, did it feel like a bit of a mature crush in any way? Like it was an adult crush that you could handle? Like you weren't going overboard. You're just like, I like this girl's voice. I check it out. But I'm not going like finding out for birthday, favorite color, all that.
Yeah, it's definitely that, right? And I didn't think about how it's like I never had any urge to look her up and find out more about her. And there have been, it's like I had to be careful. It's like because Karama is very young and I didn't want to be like a creep because that is kind of it's like, and then I had to be careful because some of the crushes are like that I might have mentioned have actually been guests on my show. I was like, well, I better not talk about any of them. That would be real creepy. So let me avoid those. Let me avoid those individuals. So so I settled on her because I feel like there's sufficient distance between us where I don't sound off too much of a creep. But that being said, yeah, I had no real urge to like look her up or try to find out about her, look up her videos. I just like listening to her voice. Like in the same way, like there's another podcast where it's three women and they're talking about video games, and I'm trying to remember I think it's called the good something. I can't remember now. Good Games. What's Good Games? That's what it's called. So it's a podcast called What's Good Games. It's an all woman hosting the show, and they sound very nice, and I like their voices. And they have a video version of their podcast on YouTube, but I never had the urge to look up the podcast to see what they look like. It just I just wasn't curious enough to do that.
That makes sense. I mean, once you get to a certain age, it's like when you're a teenager or even in your 20s, you're like, you see a celebrity or something, you're like, I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna find everything I need to know about this person. I think you get to an age where you're like, I mean, they're good looking, or you just like them and you like them for what they are, not like I think it's because at that age, there's no like, I think when you're younger, you have the fantasy of it could happen.
Right.
You're like, well, I'm going to meet Homelander and he's going to fall in love with me. Like if I was 12 today, that would be my thought, but I'm 37. So I'm like, I don't even like that actor. Like, I don't find the actor attractive. Like I'll watch interviews and I'm like, it's like just the character.
Right. That I think his name is Anthony Starr. Have you seen him
Yeah.
in anything else?
I did try to watch because he is from New Zealand, so they have a show down there that's kind of like Shameless. It's kind of like just this rough and tumble family from the wrong side of the tracks, and I did actually really like that show. And it wasn't he. I started watching it on Prime, and he's not even the best part. Like he's good in it, not to discredit him, but it's like the mom of that show is really good. So shout out to her. And then he had a show called Banshee, I believe, in the States before 2006. I couldn't get into it. It's really just
Right.
Homelander. But that show from New Zealand was very good. So I think crushes that form on sort of famous people, public figures at this age also come and go easier because, again, we're grown. We have real life things to deal with. You noted that your crush on Karama lasted a few years. Do you think, do you remember why it sort of fizzled?
I think I started hearing her less and less. Like, even though she has her own podcast, she's not she doesn't put out episode regularly, and
Mhm.
basically I kind of hear her every once in a while, and I don't necessarily listen to interview podcasts as much as I used to. So I don't listen to a bunch of episodes of her show, but every once in a while she is a guest on somebody's show, and it's like a panel show, and they're talking about social media, not social media, but superheroes and media and all that sort of thing. And I enjoy her when I hear her, but I think it kind of faded because I like I said, I don't listen to her as much, and then there are other people that come along on the scenes. And you're right, it's like when you get older, you're not as attached to or as
Mhm.
obsessed with people. It's like people can come and go, and you're all right with it.
Yeah, like, well, that was a good time, but I'm moving on. Or especially,
Right.
especially like with people like that are content creators, I guess we'd call them. If they kind of stop making the content you want, why are you going to stick around? Yeah.
Right.
So before we move on, I know we talked about we can move on from these crushes at our age, but we are going to go and let ourselves be mentally 12 years old and imagine your life with this crush. So if you and Karama found yourselves in a relationship today, how do you think it would pan out? What would your lives be like?
Don't know. I think that because I don't know that much about her, strangely enough. So, but then how much do you know about any celebrities really? So it's like,
True.
um, I think that I, I would like to get to know her. I think we would get along just fine, but I might not be her type, so I don't know exactly how that would go. I don't. My imagination isn't strong enough to figure that out. But I
Oh.
think that we have enough common interests that we would enjoy each other's company. So I think she likes video games, but I'm not sure about which games she likes. But I know she likes the same type of movies and TV shows I like. So it's like we have a great time watching stuff on TV or going to the movies. But like, does she like bowling? Does she like archery? Does she like amusement parks? Like, I don't know enough about
Yeah.
her. If because I like those things, I don't know if she would like those things.
So you might be, maybe you'd just be good friends, good go to the
Yeah,
movies, go to these premieres, movies, stuff like that. But maybe it wouldn't be true love. If she's not in a bowl, you gotta let her go. It's a string, not a
right.
string.
Yeah, I like most of my relationships when I was around 12 years old.
Hey, you have? I didn't have any at 12. They were all imaginary.
No, all well, let me think. At 12, they were all that's like is that I think that's elementary school still. So they were all just
No,
friends.
sixth grade, yeah. So
Sixth grade,
let's
yeah.
talk. Yeah. So we're going to talk a bit about backflip cinema. It started after you and your son did some bonding over some old movies that you like. Did that experience lead to any like mutual surprise favorites?
Not really. See, the caveat of the thing was because even before the podcast, we would have family outings at the movies and whatnot. So I have a pretty good idea of the things that he likes, and then I just kind of matched them up with the things that I liked when I was his age or when I was younger. So and I knew that he hadn't seen those movies. He had seen some of the movies that I had seen. Uh, from the 90s, like he's seen Blade before, and I knew he enjoyed Blade and movies like that. And so what I really wanted to do is I wanted to share the movies with him that I like, that I just knew that he would like. And so most of the time he met my expectations. Like I knew that he would like them, and he liked them. On the flip side, there were just a couple of movies that I showed him that he was not as enthusiastic about. And at the same time, I rewatched these same movies, and I was like, you know what? This didn't quite age well for me, or this movie isn't as how I remembered this movie being. So maybe so the surprise is not a movie that I showed him that I'm surprised he'd like. It's more like a movie that I showed him that I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't like, or he didn't like as well as I did.
Hey, so you and your son Zach actually started the podcast together, but life be lifing, and he had to step away in the fall 2021. Did you think about stopping at that point, or were you like, no, I'm gonna go for it?
Yeah, I was definitely had that mindset of going for it. By that time, I was like, can't stop, won't stop. I had that mentality about it. There were some events that happened where we needed to take a break, I needed to take a break from the podcast, so I had stepped away from the show for a few months, and then I just come back and I start the show again. So I'm at that point where I forgot what it's called. It's like a technical term, but it's like when you're spending money on something, and the wise thing to do is to stop spending money on it because it's not like doing anything. But you keep spending money on it because you think that eventually it's going to pan out. It's a kind of fallacy. So I would liken my obsession with podcasting to that type of fallacy, the sunk cost fallacy. I think that's what it's called. So it's like I feel like I've invested too much time and energy and effort into the show in order to just stop, right?
Yeah. But it's good that you know when you need to take a break. I got overwhelmed and I took a couple months off because I had a full-time job that I had to do. And I was like, well, but now I'm getting back into it with the summer vacation. I work at a school. So.
Right. That's pretty awesome.
Well, I'm sure
I think
Cinephile. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I'm sure some people do seasons. Like you can do seasons of podcasting and take a break when you need it and say, oh, I'll be back next season, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and with TV today, I mean, Stranger Things, we waited 30 years for season 5, so it's you can always just take a lengthy break if you need to.
Right. Your audience will always be back. We had the same thing with Star Trek Strange New World. So they ended season 2, and then at the end of season 2 the actors strike happened, and like season 1 started during COVID or something like that, and then at the end of season 2 the writer strike happened. So we had to wait like an extra long time for season 3. So well, actually, am I thinking about this wrong? Or I think
COVID,
it was
right.
I think it was a break between season 1 and season 2. I can't remember what the break was, but anyway, it was an extra long break between seasons, so it felt ridiculously long. And the seasons are so short too. They're only like 10 episodes.
No, man, bring back 23 seasons TV shows. I miss that.
Yeah.
Because I miss just like those especially for sitcoms, those random episodes that didn't move the plot along. They were just filler, but they sometimes gave you some of the best moments of the series. But we do not get that anymore.
Right.
But I will say Cinephiles are probably happy that you continued, because with well over 100 episodes to date, almost 150 at the time of this recording, you've covered everything from Home Alone to most recently Malcolm X. Do you find it harder to cover movies like Malcolm X, especially given the climate of America right now, or is it kind of exciting to dive into those more serious dramas?
No, it's actually a little bit more exciting. I think that when we had that conversation about Malcolm X, we really didn't talk too much about like today's like political climate. We did talk about culture a lot, but not about necessarily politics. We mainly focused on the movie itself. But whenever it's not just Malcolm X, but like whenever a movie touches on something that's going on in the political climate, I'm always excited to talk about the events of the movie and how they compare to the cultural or political events that's going on today. So, yeah, I find it exciting. I don't find it like intimidating or anything. I was like, yeah, let's talk about this. Let's bring it on. Let's see what this says about how we're living right now.
And you also have some other guests coming through. What's on the horizon for Backlook Cinema? More Malcolm X like biopics, or what will these new guests be talking about?
Well, my next guest I have on is we're going to be talking about Universal Soldier, and I'm really excited for people to find out whether she likes it or not, because she's not a fan of sci-fi, but she's a fan of like the action movie heroes. So
Oh.
this Universal Soldier is definitely like a action movie hero type of movie, but it's in a sci-fi setting. So one of the things that got me excited about doing the episode is having her react to or learning her reaction to Universal Soldier. So her name is Katie, and she has a podcast called Retro Made. That episode will be out next week. And Retro Made, and I like doing the podcast with her because similarly, she's doing nostalgia type movies, and I like the way on her show she connects the movie that she's talking about to the actual time frame and the culture from where that movie came from. And then later on I'm looking at my calendar right now to because because I so easily forget things. um Later on I have Derek McDuff, and we're going to be talking about Amadeus. Derek McDuff is like a poet and writer, and in general artist. And I asked, like, what do you want to watch? He was like, oh, actually no, I think I got Derek McDuff mixed up with somebody else. Maybe Derek McDuff isn't the artist. Sorry, Derek. I think Derek McDuff might be another podcaster, but anyways, we're going to be talking about Amadeus. I don't know if you remember that movie, but that was the one where they talk about the composer Amadeus and and his life story. The actual the poet and writer that I meant to talk about, his name is Quinn Q. We'll be talking to him about The Lion King. That's upcoming. So the original line, animated version of The Lion King.
The only version.
Right. The version with the very expressive animals, and that'll be cool because the trailer for the prequel version of the movie Mufasa, that's going to be coming out, I guess, soon. I don't know when, but but that'll be coming out, and that's going to be awesome. And besides your podcast, I'm going to be on a podcast called Hodgepodge, and we're going to be talking about JFK, the movie.
Oh, so many biopics. Biopics. However, I don't know how you say it. How would you say it?
How would I say?
Biopics or biopics?
That's a good question.
I would say biopics because it's like a biography picture.
Yeah. I mean, biopic
sounds
sounds more. Yeah, I don't like biopics. That sounds off. And actually, I don't like biopics because it. Are you talking about biology? Like, are you talking about science? Right?
Yeah, like we have biology pictures. It's like cool.
Right.
You got the biopics for the test.
Right. That's exactly right. So that's the good.
It's like that word BIPOC, like Black Indigenous People of Color, something that came out recently, and I was like, is that supposed to say biopic? Or like I did not know what it meant. I was like, what?
Right, absolutely. So that's a good question. I hadn't had well, if I had to choose between, I feel like I've used another term, but if I had to choose between two terms, I would choose biopic. But I don't think I've used that one, or I would probably just use the long form biography.
So before we go, I do want to do a quick speed round based around movies. Are you up for it?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. What movie to you has the best dialogue?
Oh, goodness. This is slow. Well, off the top of my head, I would say Pulp Fiction.
My husband would like that answer. He's a very big Tarantino fan. What is your favorite movie score?
Oh my goodness. I can't I can't do it. I can't do it. Probably The Empire Strikes Back.
I know you're not too fond of romantic movies, but if you and Karama could remake one together, which one would it be?
Oh, okay. That's not too hard. An Officer and a Gentleman.
Uh, what is the worst casting decision ever made in a movie?
Well, I'll defer to what somebody else said. So, well, here's the problem. The problem is names and how and how I don't remember them. Hold on. Let me think of this movie real quick. There's a movie called The Kingdom, and it has a star, and I'm trying to think of the star's name. And wait a minute. Is it The Kingdom or is it Kingdom Come? I can't remember. Maybe that's not the right one. Hold on, because I just did a movie where they were like they didn't like an actor in a movie, and I was like, well, actors should be able to play any part,
Mhm.
and but maybe that's not true all the time. Maybe it was Kingdom of Heaven that I'm thinking about. Um, or did I even see this movie? Okay. All right. Here's what I'll choose. I'll choose Orlando Bloom in Kingdom of Heaven. I'll choose that one. Even though I don't fully believe it, but that's what I'm going with.
Let's see. Orlando McKean. Let's see. Is it? Oh, no. Yeah, he kind of got like that weird typecast profile. The Lord of the Rings. I would like to see him do something fun again, like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, I think what happened is that most people, well, I don't want to say most. I heard a couple of people say that he's not necessarily a great leading man. He's great as a support actor, but he's not great leading the film.
No,
So he's.
I see that.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
mean, I mean, I could see that. I mean, in the first Lord of the Rings, he was just staring intensely in every scene he was doing. Just like I rewatched it recently, and my husband, I was like, he's just staring.
Right, right. Um, so in Kingdom of Heaven, he's supposed to carry the movie, and there are people who feel that he doesn't carry that movie well. So I'll choose that one.
And lastly, what movie has given you the best theater experience so far?
Oh wow, that's a good question. I think lately I want to say Dune Volume 1 or Part 1, Dune Part 1. I just and specifically I just like the way that they used sound in the film. So especially there's a lot of bass or a lot of things that are reverberating throughout the theater. But one of my favorite parts is the first time you hear the voice that's being used in Dune. That was impressive. It's just an impressive, and just everything just looks. It's like by the time you get to Dune Part 2, you already know what to expect. But when you see Dune Part 1, you're seeing everything for the first time, and so you see a lot of things that are incredible and visually impressive. And there's nothing that goes across your mind that's saying anything like, "Oh, that's just CGI." You're not thinking that because it looks so incredible, and yeah, I just like to see things that are visually impressive and beautiful and artistic. And I think that's what Dune gave us.
And before we go, can you remind people where they can find you online?
Yeah, once again, it's backlickcinema.com. Also, you can find me on Twitter. Where I don't really hang out on Facebook, but I'll throw that out there. Instagram, I'm heavily on Instagram. You can find my TikToks. I have a YouTube page. Blue Sky, even though I don't really hang out on Blue Sky. Mastodon, even though I don't. It's almost impossible to find people on Mastodon. You can find me at all of those social media places at Backlook Cinema.
I don't even know what Mastodon and Blue Sky is. You are deep on the internet.
Yeah. It's like every once in a while I post something on Mastodon, and every once in a while I post on Blue Sky. Both of those are Twitter clones. And one of them, like Blue Sky, is actually a social media that was developed by the former CEO of Twitter. Um,
Oh,
but they're just okay. It's like they don't. Oh, I'm also in Threads, but like under the same at Backlook Cinema. So they don't offer like the same feedback. There're just not as many people on those platforms.
mhm.
But there are a lot of people on Threads and Instagram and Twitter. So those are my the three main places I hang out, are those three.
Well, so, and shout out to Mastodon. I guess this is the plug for them. Get on it if you can.
Or
Thank
if
you
you
so.
want.
Yeah, if you want, join it. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your podcast Crush with me today. And everyone, you can find all of those information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it.
Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, along with some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, Season to Season, The Sip List, and Toontastic Journeys. You can go to idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com to find not only Crushgasm, but all of the aforementioned really cool podcasts. Alrighty.